This is the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.
What's up? Welcome into the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, the final one of our spring season, our first season of this show. We will go on hiatus over the course of the summer months, so enjoy your summer vacation from us. We will enjoy it from you, but we've got one more show to put in the books tonight. Mike Leslie, Andrew Cely, our esteemed panel coming on your way here shortly. Andrew, it's been a pretty good spring to start up a brand new Dallas sports talk show with the Stars and Mavs doing what they did.
I feel like you're calling back to something we did last week, but that's all right. In this case, what you've got in your hands right now with that football has me excited because that's going to be a big part of the show. Let's get right into it with What's on the Show.
Here's What's on the Show, sponsored by NFM.
All right, it is summertime, which means Cowboys Camp is right around the corner. We'll take a look at what's in store for this year's Cowboys team as they get ready to head off to Oxnard. Stars are fresh off of some big moves, not only in the NHL draft, but free agent signings, so we'll see if they're any closer to that Stanley Cup that they've been trying to get over the last couple of years.
Or farther away.
Or farther away, depending on how you look at it. On that note, a while back we did top 5 sports acquisitions, and I think it was a pretty good list. Considering free agents are the talk of the town right now, might be worthwhile taking a look at the top 5 DFW free agency signings. That is what is on the show. Mike, who is on the show?
We've got our panel back again today. Michelle Montaine, our colleague here at WFAA, and Saad Yousuf from The Athletic joining us as well. Saad, an expert in all things Cowboys and Stars. We appreciate you guys both being with us tonight. Let's jump into the Cowboys to start things off here. And Michelle, I'll come to you first. This will be your first opportunity to go to Cowboys Camp in just about a month's time as the Cowboys try to make something of 2024. What is the thing you're looking forward to most as we head out to Oxnard?
I think, going into this offseason, Jerry Jones's words right before the draft was, they're, quote, all in. And then this offseason has been the Cowboys in cruise control. They really haven't done much in terms of big signings joining the team. They haven't done much in terms of signing the people actually on the team currently. So I think there are a lot of dynamics at play off the field. So I think going into camp, it'll be our first real look at, okay, given the moves or lack thereof this offseason, how is this group actually going to compete on the field where it matters, and especially how are they going to get themselves past the first round of the playoffs in 2024? That's what I'm looking forward to.
Saad,
that's a big ask. What about for you, Saad?
Yeah, you're already out there in California, Saad. Give us an update here.
Well, I think, first of all, the 69-degree weather is great, so no complaints there.
Nice.
But, going to Cowboys training camp, I think, for me, the whole thing with Mike Zimmer and him being the new defensive coordinator, a lot of what Michelle talked about as well, I mean, all that stuff applies, but Micah Parsons is a big part of all of this, just in terms of the contract lingering. Of course, his was kind of in third priority after Dak and CD, but Micah Parsons, how he adjusts to a new scheme, how they choose to use Micah Parsons, and just the whole dynamic of, again, like we've seen with his Twitter activity and stuff, just how all of that kind of plays together. Because outside of the quarterback position, Micah is the most intriguing and best player on the Cowboys, and so everything revolves around that.
So Mike is the kind of key in this, and he made some headlines recently, not for anything necessarily that he said, but because of Malik Hooker saying that he was Micah was the third person that should be paid out of the guys that are left to be paid between Dak, CD, and Micah. Is it par for the course that we're dealing with these kind of arguments again heading into Cowboys camp here?
I mean, to me, the comment, though, that Hooker made that drew my attention even more than power ranking who gets signed and when was the comment that he thought that Micah needed to kind of zip it.
Yeah.
Which
was ironic considering, but...
Well, granted. The thing that was ironic to me was for Micah to be the one to then come back and say, well, you could have just said this to me in person.
Right.
That rang hollow given who Micah has been over the course of his first couple of years here in Dallas. But take your pick, man.
Yeah.
They've all got their relative levels of importance. I think more than anything else, if you don't sign Dak Prescott, you're probably going to end up in a quarterback desert. And then nothing else that you have matters.
What should we expect from this team this year?
I think it is a make or break. And I think when Jerry said all in, I think his definition of all in is everybody being on a contract year and everybody is on high alert for what their future can be. And I think we'll see next spring what, all that kind of results in, because to Mike's point, just about Micah falling third, Micah is also the one with the most, I think, trade value and things like that. What good does having a superstar pass rusher do for the team if you don't have a quarterback, if you don't have this? And I could see that being a situation where all of a sudden Micah could be a guy that's kind of on the trade market and you're using those draft picks to then rebuild the team. So I think there's a lot on the line this season. All this talk that we have about this season, it's really not even about this season. The Cowboys could go 10-6. They can go 17-0. It doesn't matter as long as what happens in January doesn't line up with what Jerry's looking for.
I think a key part there was the fact that for the first time we heard Stephen Jones admit as much, Saad. He said, look, we've done okay in the regular season, but January is where people care about us playing, and that's where we haven't been able to play. CeeDee Lamb is up there in terms of statistical categories across the league in all the ones that matter for wide receivers. And behind him, you need Brandon Cooks to be able to play like Brandon Cooks at his peak. You need Jalen Tolbert to be able to be that legit number 3. And from what we saw at least last year, those are possibilities, but they're not necessarily guarantees. And so you really do need CD. So it's just kind of another layer when you're talking about, okay, what are these pieces and what do we really need? You need all of them. And if you want to have sustained success, you need all of them to stay and produce on the field.
As it relates to whether or not they blow this whole thing up, though, I'm sorry, but I keep coming back to, and I've got to figure out a way to word this delicately. Jerry Jones is the age that he is. I don't know that he's got the time to blow this thing up and start over again.
So, but
he clearly wants to win a championship.
Saad, go ahead.
Jerry's own words, to put it delicately, he doesn't have time to have a bad time. So I think that's the best way to put it.
That is, Let's let his words say it because it's a delicate topic. But it's also reality, and I think it impacts where they do go from here, even if they do lose in the first round of the playoffs again in 2024. Early 2025, whatever.
Which has been the case for the last 30 years. So
right. So it's not like it's that significant a departure from the norm anyway. I can't see them blowing it up.
That's kind of where a lot of teams are right now in the summer. Do we blow it up? Do we keep the core together? And no one knows that more on some level than the Stars, who have hit their wall in the Western Conference Final for the last couple of years. When we come back in the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, we are talking Stars. Stay with us.
Today's headlines, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers.
Wyatt Langford makes history. The rookie hits for the cycle, and the Rangers finally snap their losing skid 11-2 over the Orioles. And the drama between the Longhorns and Aggies continues. Michael Early decides to pivot and not follow Schlossnagle to Texas. He returns to A&M to be their head coach next year.
Welcome back to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. We just got done talking Cowboys. Time now to talk about the other major free agency section. I know the Mavs are going on right now, but the Stars have made some interesting moves, and I think chief among them has to be the loss of Chris Tanev, which kind of felt like a priority signing that now all of a sudden is not.
I mean, listen, you could read the tea leaves on this one. Everything that Jim Nill was saying over the course of the last several weeks was indicating that it was going to be at the very least hard to re-sign Chris Tanev. He kept saying that he kept knocking the batteries out of his calculator and trying to have different numbers come up, and it just never materialized. Chris Tanev, his rights anyway, traded to the Maple Leafs. Saad, you've been closer to this team than probably just about anybody over the course of the last several years. What do you make of the move, and what do you make of the Stars as they begin the process of trying to, again, find that last puzzle piece or two to a championship?
Yeah, I think it's a lot about supply and demand. And, a lot of times when we were talking about this free agency for the Stars, it was Duchesne and Tanev. And I always said, I get it. Tanev plays the more premium position. It's hard to find right shot defensemen. But at the same time, he is a guy who's going to be in high demand. There's going to be a bidding war. And the Stars just can't afford to get into that right now, literally, because they have a lot of contracts coming up. Now, 2025 is going to be a big year for them when Jamie Benn and Radek Faksa and Esa Lindell all come off the books, at least at the price tags that they're at. But right now, they have to look at Jason Robertson coming up, Wyatt Johnson coming up, Thomas Harley coming up. Jake Ottinger coming up. There's a lot of business that they have to do. And what I hear that the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to do with Tanev is try to give him a 6-year deal to reduce the cap hit, and so that they can kind of get him at a smaller tag average per year. But I think for the Stars, I understand the void there is at defenseman, but you still have Miro Heiskanen, you have Esa Lindell right now, you have Thomas Harley, and what you're really banking on is for Leon Bitchel to be what he is supposed to be, which is a solid top 4 defenseman. You hope that he's ready to go by the start of the season.
Well, we knew going into this offseason, I believe the numbers were Dallas was 18th out of the 32 NHL teams with just under $18.5 million in terms of cap space for this season. So we knew it was going to be hard for Jim Nill to try to do that calculator computing that you were talking about, Mike. Jamie Benn, coming into this postseason said that he felt like they were deeper than they were last year. Even with the pieces, they haven't been able to get over that hump. It'll be interesting to see what are they able to manipulate in order to not just get back, but to get there.
I think the interesting thing with Tanev's departure on some level was he was kind of the face of the defense. He was one of the more aggressive guys on the blue line, and it was nice having that rock-solid guy back there. It's not saying that the Stars don't have depth at that position, but the premium defender does make a difference, and I'm not sure they get through Vegas or Colorado without him. It's sad to see someone of Tanev's stature go, and at the same time realize that that is just the nature of hockey right now in general, that you can try and amass these teams for one-year experiments, and if it doesn't get it done, some of your favorite guys are gone. And I think the best example of that, though, might be Pavelski. But go ahead, Saad.
Well, I was just going to add, I mean, let's not forget Miro Heiskanen, though. When you still have a guy like him who is legitimately one of the top 3 to 5 defensemen in the world,
right? And
he can play on the left and right side, and then you have Thomas Harley, who's a nice up-and-comer. I think your top pairing should be pretty solid. And I agree with you. I don't know how far Dallas gets if Chris Tanev's not there, because you need that defensive defenseman who plays a physical style. But the Stars aren't going to start from scratch here. They have Harley and Heiskanen. And, for a while when they were playing together last year, they weren't the best pairing on the Stars. They were one of the best pairings in the entire league. And so I think there is a factor of you need to fill out the depth, but I think the Stars are in a decent spot.
That's comforting to hear, especially after Pavelski retiring, which I think was needed on some level. There were enough moments in the playoffs specifically where you could see the age catching up to the tires. Mike, you've thrown some ideas out there as how he could try and contribute to next year's team, which
I don't know how realistic it is.
Right.
Jim Nill did say that they'd welcome him back in any sort of off-ice role for sure. I have this pie-in-the-sky mentality of hey, maybe, in February or whatever. I mean, I know there's cap constrictions and rules that he's got to kind of fall within.
Just get him on LTIR and it'll be fine. That's how every team does it these days.
Yes, just go full Vegas Golden Knights and get him on the roster and just have him there for when you need him in the postseason and give him one last run. I'd love to see the guy come back even for just like a 3-month spurt and give it one more shot, because why not?
Listen, one of my favorite, I'm a Lightning fan, so I'll just throw that out there and apologize for 2020, but have the idea of Pavelski being on a 1 minute and 20-second shift like Stamkos in Game 3 of that series is kind of the thing dreams are made of, and we can only hope, but there's a lot that goes into that.
We'll see.
Saad, I'm curious from your perspective, is there anything in the draft that we should look at as a guy that could spark the same way that some of the young guns did this year?
With the NHL draft, obviously, if you're not picking in the top 5, top 10, you're not looking at these guys really coming in and contributing right away. So a lot of the guys everybody the Stars pick, no one's going to be an instant contributor. But I think if you are talking about the draft and who can contribute immediately, to me, it's 2 names. I think the Stars traded away Ty Dellandrea because they want to make sure there's a spot there for Maverick Bourque in a premium spot, not just taking 4th-line minutes or anything like that. So I believe that was their 2020 first-round pick. And then you look at their 2022 first-round pick, I believe, in Leon Bitchel, and I think he's going to have a clear opportunity to make the roster if he's ready. I would say Bourque is going to be on the roster when the season starts. I think with Bitchel, the way that we saw the Stars work Thomas Harley and let him grow in the AHL and then bring him in when he was ready, it wouldn't surprise me if Leon Bitchel was somebody that started off in the AHL, but when the playoff run was getting ready to go, he would be on the roster, and he would be in a top 4 spot, in my opinion.
Again, it's tough when you look at a team that's made it this far the last couple of years and think, what is that missing piece? But you got to like what you've seen over the last few and hope that this regime, again, 2-time reigning
took the words right out of my
general
mouth.
manager of the year.
You got Nill calling the shots.
Exactly.
You've got reason to feel like he's going to pull the right strings. And in some form or fashion, chances are pretty good Jim Nill is going to figure something out.
It's time to go to top 5. We got top 5 DFW sports free agency signings. Stay with us on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show.
And now it's time for the top 5, sponsored by the Fort Worth Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Welcome back to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. We are talking top 5 DFW free agent signings. We did the sports acquisitions a while back where I kind of cheated a little bit with bringing the stars into the fold. But if you've seen that list, if you haven't, go back and watch it. It's on YouTube. If you haven't, let's bring you in a little bit and kick things off with number 5 on the list, Ed Belfor, who should have gotten more recognition in the previous list and yet was one of the anchors of the Stars Stanley Cup run and arguably their best years of contention in that 99 to 01 range. Saad, we'll start with you. What do you think of this guy being on the list?
Yeah, I think he's anytime you're talking about free agency acquisitions, you're talking about championships, and you know that has to be tied to it. And Ed Belfor was the backstop of that, and those chants at Reunion Arena and all that stuff, you can't forget any of that stuff. So I would have him right up there in the entire Metroplex.
Sounds like a good spot to me. Number 4, now moving on here. Marcus Semien, a little bit more recent, but again, led to a championship. I feel like Marcus doesn't get the respect that he deserves a little bit on some level, which is weird because he's the Iron Man of the group around here. But everyone talks about Cory Seager first, and deservedly so. The team isn't anywhere without Semien being there on a consistent basis. Michelle, what do you think?
There's a reason he's in the leadoff spot, right?
Yeah.
And there's a reason he's also the one Ranger on this year's team that we know is struggling, that is getting all-star consideration. When you talk about your leadoff guy, there are certain things that they have to contribute. There are certain attributes that they need to have. He has all of them. And you think about the Iron Man status you just talked about, the best ability is availability. He's the guy who's always in the lineup, a guy you can always count on. And like you guys said, his contributions to Texas gave them their first World Series last year. You can't, I mean, Saad just said it, you can't talk about, you know, big free agent signings without mentioning if they led to a championship or not. And Semien's a perfect example of doing exactly that.
Side note, he is still in his career, but he's already technically in the Hall of Fame. I just visited Cooperstown. They had a display on there. He leads all second basemen all time in fielding percentage, which is kind of cool. Anyway,
it's a good little nugget.
It is cool.
Yeah.
Let's move on now to number 3 on the list, Bret Hall, which was one of the honorable mentions on the top 5 sports acquisitions last time, and Jonah was fighting hard for him. He makes this list because he was arguably the most important free agent signing out of that group. Obviously, Ed Belfor has something to say about that. But when you have the most iconic goal, it's hard to argue against his impact. Mike, your thoughts?
When all of Buffalo hates you, yes, you belong on the list. I am intrigued, though. We've gone Belfor, Semien, Hull.
Yeah.
If Semien's on the list, I feel like Seager's got to be on the list the way that you talked about him.
Oh yeah.
I'm just curious to see where the remainder of this list goes.
Well,
Go ahead.
You know what? Let's.
I'm reserving judgment until I see 2 and 1.
Let's move on to number 2, Cory Seager. Way to ruin the surprise, Mike. We talked enough about Cory Seager at this point. I feel like the Game 1 World Series homer says enough.
It's time.
Exactly. But the resume speaks for itself. Saad, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, you know, he gets all the shine for the Seager-Semien pairing, but I think everything he's done, his swagger, the way that he's played, and the way that he's led, I think there's something also to be said about bringing that winning culture. And he comes from a place where he did reach the mountaintop and he did win. So I think bringing that really does help bring a belief to the Rangers, and they were able to get it done with him.
All right, and with that, let's move on to number 1, which shouldn't be a surprise if we saw the last list. It is, of course, Dion Sanders. When the guy is a brand before he steps foot on a Cowboys field, and Jerry is making commercials before the season starts about "Get me Dion," there's something to be said about bringing a figure that is not only impressive on the field but larger than life off of it, and he has lived up to every aspect of that. Michelle, your thoughts?
If you can't beat him, steal him, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They bring him from San Francisco, and then they win the ensuing Super Bowl. I mean, he is larger than life. If he wasn't number 1, I would be concerned about who was putting this list
That's
together.
where I was sitting. Yeah. I'm going, okay, so at what point are we going to get here?
So
right.
the interesting thing when I was building this list, because initially I was thinking, okay, I got to try and get all 4 of the major sports teams in here. But the surprising thing was the Mavs do not have the defined history of bringing in that one guy in free agency that changes the whole thing. The closest you could mention maybe Sean Marion on a sign-and trade, J.J. Barea as a free agency, as a fan favorite, or Peja Stojakovic as a one-off, as a guy that got you over the hump from a three-point perspective. But the rest of the guys on this list could be argued to change the culture of the teams that they brought in. Saad, are there any honorable mentions just off the top of your head you're thinking need to be or put on here?
Yeah, I think there's three that I'll quickly mention. Jay Novacek, to me, was a really big one.
Yep.
And, he came in 1990 and had a great run through the whole dynasty. Leroy Glover is a linebacker who gets doesn't get the shine because he came in during those terrible, terrible years in the early 2000s. But he was phenomenal when he got here. And then Joe Pavelski. I think when you look at what the Stars are going to do going forward and the impact that he's had on this young roster, Robertson, Wyatt Johnston, if the Stars don't win a championship next year and Jamie Benn's contract runs out, I believe Wyatt Johnston's going to be the next captain, and I believe he's going to be the one that's going to help them get over. And even though Joe might not be on the roster when they win a championship, I believe his fingerprints are going to be all over the next Stars team that wins the Cup.
I think that's the most devastating part of this when I was putting this together was leaving Pavelski off of it because you couldn't put the Stanley Cup next to his name on it, and it was hard to remove Belfor or Semien for that reason. Again, hopefully you are right. We see his impact lead to one. But on that note, Saad, thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it, especially on vacation. Stay with us on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Coming up next, Mike has his final take. Welcome back to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Time now for Mike's final take.
I'm going to keep this one kind of meta. Just thank you guys for letting us bring a brand new show into your living rooms over the course of the last couple of months. The Ultimate Dallas Sports Show started up in, was it officially April?
Roughly right around there, yeah.
Right before the playoffs began. Kind of perfect timing as it turned out. We didn't know what we were about to get with the Mavs and Stars rolling through the playoffs and giving us plenty of fodder to talk about all the way through those playoff runs, but it worked out very, very well. We're going to take about 2 months off, come back just in time for the Cowboys football season. But seriously, thank you guys for letting us try out something new. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it as much as we have.
It's a nice sentiment, but it's also a cop-out. I'm a little disappointed you didn't come up with something more interesting to say. Thank you guys so much for watching the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. We'll see you in a couple months.
It's June. There's nothing to talk about. Enjoy your summer.
This has been the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.